You're here this week to hear Jen talk about Mississippi kayaking. In mid-June of 2010, Jen and Barry and Melissa paddled for 5 days through the Mississippi over a dam, through Lake Bemidji, and to the most northern point of the Mississippi River. They had to accommodate the fact that Minnesota has funky weather, and it was even stranger then because they had the most tornadoes in a single day in Minnesota history. So Jen's going to tell you all about that. She's been a Rover since 2007, and has spent 10 years on the board and likes to camp and cross-country ski and snowshoe and hike and kayak and play pickleball. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen. Take it away.
Thanks, Fran. So as Fran said, we were kayaking and camping on the Mississippi River in mid-June. Logistics of the trip. We started at the we were going to start at the headwaters of the Mississippi at Itasca State Park. We're going to end 5 miles past Lake Bemidji State Park, which is where this other star is, and it's not moving for me. So there we go, in Stump Lake. We brought 2 cars because we had to do a shuttle. The plan was for 79 miles. Barry and I had kayaks, but when we posted the trip, we were open if anyone wanted to do canoes or anything, but it was 3 kayaks. Barry did the latitude and longitude from Google Earth and planned our days. So we would start at Lake Itasca the first day, go 16.5 miles, and we'd camp at Coffee Pot Landing. So we had different points that we were watching for to make sure we were going the right direction. Day 5, we were going to end at Lake Bemidji State Park, 79 miles. We also had a map along. I circled the first 4 campsites. We got to Itasca State Park. We dropped Barry off, and Melissa and I drove to Lake Bemidji State Park to leave Melissa's car there. We got permission to leave cars at both ends for up to a week, and we stayed at Itasca State Park for 1 night. We went over the plans. We had packed in case we got wet, so everything we did had to go into a waterproof bag. We borrowed a couple bear canisters from the gear locker, which helped a lot. And we had to stuff sleeping bags and everything in the dry bags, and they had to fit inside our kayaks. So day 1, we were going from the headwaters to Coffee Pot Landing, 16.5 miles. But as we entered the park, we stopped at the visitor center and we asked about the depth of the Mississippi at the start, because we knew that our kayaks were going to be heavier. And so if the river wasn't that deep, it would be a struggle to kayak. And they said, you know, it's very shallow. We saw 2 people hauling their boats upriver, dragging their boats upriver because it's too shallow. So we're like, okay, well, we'll start at Galvig's Landing. So there's 2 miles that we did not do. So in the morning, Barry dropped off the boats and me at Galvig's Landing, and I put stuff in the boats. Barry went back to pick Melissa up and her kayak. And when they got back, I drove one of the cars to the spot where we were allowed to park for up to a week. And then I walked back, which I think was about 2 miles. I got back and Barry's already in the water. Melissa's getting ready and I need to just get ready as well. And we're off. And it's pretty narrow at that part, not as narrow as we'll get. Melissa had just purchased this kayak from another Rover within the last year, and Barry's 17-foot kayak. And we are meandering through. We get to Viken's Dam, which is a portage, and we decided to have lunch there. While we were having lunch, we ran into two people that were kayaking, and they discussed that they had been going from the headwaters to Gullvig's Landing the previous day, and they had so much fun. They dragged their kayaks back upriver to do it again. So we probably could have paddled those 2 miles, but it was kind of funny that we ran into the same two people that the Itasca State Park person saw. And this is the bottom of the dam. We're getting going again after lunch. And there was about, I think, 3 miles of rapids after the portage. It wasn't too bad. We just had to stay away from the rocks. We went under bridges and tunnels. And the river did get pretty narrow. Narrow enough where we took our paddles apart and we were moving kind of like a canoe, paddling like a canoe. There were obstacles. Barry decided to go over and under this tree. Well, I think I walked around, but it worked for him. And then there was some that we had to drag our kayaks over, which, as you can see, the water at this point was not deep. It was maybe up to Melissa's knees or a little bit lower. And you can see Barry standing, waiting for his turn. So along the river, Barry was collecting garbage, not a lot of garbage, mainly like cheap beer cans and stuff, and maybe some water bottles. And when he came to a bridge, he would bring the garbage up. So if someone's collecting garbage up there, they could pick it up. So instead of just leaving it in the river. And the river got a little windy at parts, and it was hard turning sometimes. So I don't think this was a purposeful collision, but we all kind of got together at this point. We got to Coffee Pot Landing, and when we got there, there was this guy there that was, I don't know, having dinner or getting prepared or something. He was from Michigan. He was trying to be the first kayaker to kayak from the mouth of the Mississippi down to the end. He seemed to change his mind after we arrived, even though there was a lot of room to stay here, but he moved on and stayed maybe under a bridge or something, I don't know. And here he is leaving again. We saw a turtle. I think it was laying eggs right there. Day 2, we went from Coffee Pot Landing to Fox Trap campsite, and it was 19.5 miles. It was a little rainy start. Most of the campsites we stayed at had a shelter, which was very nice. And you can see it's a pretty narrow bit. It's just kind of an overcast day. Another obstacle that we ended up going under. I didn't take as many pictures on this stretch because it was kind of gloomy, but we stayed at Fox Trap campsite. It was up on a hill, which is nice, and also had some hiking up there, so we were able to stretch the legs a bit. kayak parking at the base. Ran into a muskrat and a tree hugger. It was just a nice place to hang out. We were able to just kind of view the river. Day 3, we went from Fox Trap campsite to Iron Bridge Landing, which was 23 miles. Right away, pretty quickly, there was this overlook. I don't know what it was, if it was a campsite or a landing or something, but Barry wanted to explore it. So Melissa and I stayed down there while he climbed up and explored. From up there, you can see a lot of channels. It's obvious that we were on the right river, but other parts weren't so obvious when we were driving kayaking through. We kept seeing this one blackbird. We're not sure if it's the same blackbird, but it was just kind of leading us along. I'm pretty sure there was more than one, but we also saw ducks with young, and the parent ducks would make a scene to try and get us away from their young, even though we had no interest in the young. Now, we aren't sure if this is a shortcut or not. We had to really rely on the grass under the water, see which direction it was flowing, so to find the currents. And we're just heading into Rice Lake, a big beaver lodge. And this is Rice Lake, and it's pretty tricky if you don't know where the exit of Mississippi is. So based on the coordinates, we did very well, and we didn't have to zigzag or anything. We had lunch at Pine Point campsite, and we had cell reception, so I was on the phone. And then we took off and headed towards our next campsite. Ran into a water level gauge. It looks like it was about 2 feet here. And shortly after this, there was a wooded area that was super mosquito-y, which was an issue because I didn't have any bug spray and I didn't have my spray skirt on, so it was super buggy. But before that, Melissa and I were headed off ahead of Barry because he was going to drop off some garbage. There's a bridge right in this area, and he was going to drop off some garbage. So we took off, and I kept looking back, and I couldn't see him. I'm like, okay, did he fall and hit his head on rocks or something? So I ended up turning around, and Melissa was ahead of me, so she didn't know I was doing this. And I caught up with him. He was on his way, but he had found mushrooms. So distraction. We were getting close to the campsite, and based on the GPS, we were spot on, but we didn't see the campsite sign. And we finally spotted it, but it was a little bit a ways from there. As I was setting up the tent, Barry and Melissa saw a big snapping turtle. Now, I didn't see it, so I'm not sure if it actually happened, but there's no pictures. And then it was super mosquito-y and the wood was wet, so it was hard to start a fire, if I recall. Day 4, we were going from Iron Bridge Landing to Stump Lake campsite. Stump Lake was going to be our last one on the river, and it was 10 miles. And the river's getting wider at this point. This is this Highway 71 bridge. And we were heading towards Lake Irving. So we were probably just right about here. You can see Lake Irving, and then Lake Bemidji. So what we did was just cut straight across because it was not as big of a lake as Lake Bemidji. We stopped on the shore to get our paddle jackets and rain gear on because we knew storms were coming. And then we just kayaked across. This is the channel in between Lake Irving and Lake Bemidji. And we stuck along the shore, along the south and eastern shore, just because Lake Bemidji is pretty big and it was getting windy. Paddled through the reeds, and you can see there's a dragonfly up here. And we had to figure out if we were going to continue to the campsite, because it was starting to sprinkle and we knew the storms were coming. This was the exit from Lake Bemidji to the Mississippi. And it started sprinkling and raining, and we're like, no, we should probably go and stay at Lake Bemidji State Park. So we chose to just continue along Lake Bemidji to the campsite. We got the campsite for an extra night. These were the storm clouds coming in. Melissa and I had to go grab the other car, so we took off to Itasca State Park again, and those were the clouds that were to the west. There were 48 tornadoes in Minnesota on June 17th, including one in Wadena. So we were probably smart to get off the river and stay at a state park. Campsite. And then when we were there, we went on a bog walk. So there's a lady slipper, a pitcher plant. While we were getting done with the walk, the rangers were coming around letting us know that there was bad weather coming and we should go to the basement of the visitor center. So we spent, I don't know, an hour or so in the basement, and I don't know if it was a true basement, but it was probably safer than our tent. The next day, we wanted to get to the Stump Lake campsite that we were planning on getting to and camping at. So we went 4 miles each way. But first, Barry wanted to surf the waves at Lake Bemidji State Park. So he headed out. It was really windy that day, as you can see, and he was surfing the waves. I think I got some video, but I could not find it. And then we went and parked along the Mississippi and got in and paddled. It does not look windy here, but it was. We got to according to the waypoints, we got to the northernmost point of the Mississippi River. And then there was a house a little ways away saying that this was the most northernmost point. So this is where we parked. We went along here, and the waypoint for us for the Stump Lake campground was where this red X was, but we couldn't find the campsite. We looked and Barry ended up finding it, and it was right where the green, I think this is right where it was. It wasn't that close. So if we would have gone the previous day and there was storms, it would have been a hard time finding the campsite. Basically, we went back to where we parked and stayed at Lake Bemidji State Park again. So that'd be it. Any questions?
Great pictures. Thank you, Melissa, Jen, and Barry. How did you plan the route? I'm curious. That looks like it was quite the trip.
Do you want to? answer that? I'm gonna get out of sharing if I can. Stop share.
If you want to go, yeah. So the way we planned it is we looked up the campsites on the website. There's a website with the campsites, and we got waypoints for them. And then the challenge is just making sure you're in the main channel of the Mississippi. And I'd read a bunch of books about different people going down the Mississippi, and you just got to see where the water's flowing. And like Jen mentioned, see where the grass is bent over. And it can get challenging in some of the bigger open areas and where there's multiple channels. And then that one spot, I took a shortcut and I went down that way because the water was flowing pretty well. So I figured it was going to go somewhere. So we went down there, but it can be a little challenging. We have gone through from Itasca State Park at different times through the culvert. There's a culvert. It's real shallow. You drag your boat and then you go through the rice fields, and it's doable, but it's challenging.
How long each day were you generally in the boats?
We started off pretty early, and I don't remember how long it took us. We typically get mid-afternoon, get to the campsites, I believe.
It wasn't terrible, I don't think.
No, it wasn't a lot of time in the kayaks, but we did get going pretty early, I think.
Like 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock?
Oh, probably 9, I would think. Melissa, what do you think?
I don't remember that piece, but what I do remember is there were a ton of red-winged blackbirds. There were a ton of dragonflies with black and clear wings. And then there were some moths. I don't know that they're moths, but they were insects that flew. They lit up at night and they flew. You know, they didn't fly like this. They flew where their bodies like that. And they were lit up. And to me, it just went, come and eat me, come and eat me. They were just, you know, flying groceries. Yeah, it was pretty enchanting. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a fun trip. And
you know, and that's where I learned also, you know, the day that we drove to put into the river to try and find the Stump Lake campground. So I was new to kayak stuff, and I had tied my kayak down on the front and the back and then around the middles. And I just thought, ugh, what a pain in the butt. So I just strapped it down in the middle that day, and we went across a bridge, and I got hit by a big wind and the kayak just went sideways on the top of the car. So my takeaway from that is I always strap down the front and the ends, and I just use 4 straps. I'm just kind of anal about it.
yeah, the day after the tornadoes, it was super windy. And when we were coming back, it was, I think we were going against obviously against the current, but also against the wind. And all of a sudden I was just hearing this sick moose. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And it was a siren. It was like a wind siren, but it was spinning around. It wasn't constant. It just sounded awful.
Oh, weird. You know, and I want to say the turtle was real at that one campsite. He looked like he was going home from how do we know that was, anyway, like she was
laying eggs.
Oh, okay. Well, she was going,
One was snapping. So.
it was kind of rush hour on the river, and she was just making her way down the middle of it. It was a real cool, it was a great.
You're talking about the snapping turtle. Okay.
Yeah. The one in the middle that I think Barry and I both saw, and I'm sorry you didn't. But it was fun.
I was escaping the mosquitoes by setting up the tent.
Yeah, they were bad on that one spot. I remember that.
Any more questions?
Any more questions?
Did you see any exotic birds or hear any whippoorwill at night? Any coyotes?
Nope.
Mm-mm.
Nope, we just saw a lot of red-winged blackbirds and probably a lot of other birds too, but we just really noticed the red-winged blackbirds, both male and female. We didn't hear any, as far as we were so tired at night, I don't know that we woke up, woken up.
Yeah, I would like to do more of that river. I don't know that I need to go across. Is it the Big Lakes, Winnebagoshus, and whatever the other one is? But it would be fun to do more of that. I don't need to go all the way down to New Orleans or to the Gulf, but it would be fun.
Yeah, I
was-
was gonna ask you if you had any plans for this summer to, go back to where you ended and do another section. Kind of do it in sections, maybe down to the cities or
Right.
any plans
right.
like that?
No, I don't think so right now.
No,
Canal bottom stuff.
Well, it's pretty impressive. You did that 23-mile day, you guys. Did you have a pretty good current that day?
not sure. It was, if we started early enough and going down the river, we didn't stop very much, as far as we just stopped for lunch and got to the ending campsite.
Very impressive.
Thanks.
Any favorite or memorable meals while you were on it?
I think we just did, well, Barry and I think we just did dried meals. So,
No, and I probably dehydrated my own, but that was a long time ago by now. So no, I do not. I don't remember. I packed.
Fresh, oh, sorry, the fresh mushrooms.
Oh,
That
yeah,
was-
did you
we
guys?
did have the mushrooms, but Melissa brought a lot of fresh fruit.
I did.
Yes,
Oh.
you did.
Okay. All right. Okay. And I did a dry run packing my kayak to make sure I could get, because this was I bought the kayak because I wanted to camp with a kayak. So I got the opportunity, but I really needed to do a dry run of packing it. So that was an interesting, how much can you stuff into the front point? And I think I got everything in all the hatches, but you can see there, I could see pictures of yours where I had stuff on the back too. So I maybe overpacked a little bit, but.
And Barry and I were carrying the bear barrels. So
Oh, that's
your
right.
food was in ours because your kayak wasn't big enough in the inside to carry
Yeah.
one of the bear
To
barrels.
carry a canister, yeah.
Yep.
Stacy's saying something like,
Your average miles per hour when you're kayaking on a river.
How fast were we going? Do you know?
Well, normally I think we do about 3. You
About,
want me to answer?
yeah.
So I think normally in a kayak, from my experience, you do about probably 3 miles an hour, about walking pace. But we did have some current to help us out. And that's a reason to go in spring or early summer, because you get more current on the river and less weeds to go through. So maybe that's what helped with the 23 miles a day. I don't remember. Actually, in a couple of places there's some rapids. There's like 3 miles of rapids that are kind of fun because they're probably class 1 or 2 and they're not scary. And then I remember on another day when we were getting eaten by bugs, it was pretty fast. And we couldn't really swat the bugs too well because we were too busy going with the rapids. So sometimes it was real slow and then other times there was some rapids. So, but spring is definitely the time to do it when there's a little more flow and a few less weeds.
And also, we had gone to Itasca State Park for the hostile takeover one fall, and we tried to get up to Gulvig's Landing, but in the fall there was so much reeds we could not find the way. We were trying to find where the river flowed and everything, and we couldn't. So we were happy to be able to find it. Terry, Mike, do you have a question?
Yeah, I did roughly the same route in a canoe about 30 years ago. I was wondering how, and I'm sorry I came a little late, but I remember the count of how many portages I had to do over beaver dams on the very first day. Did you guys have that count?
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
No.
We didn't have to go over beaver dams. We skipped the first 2 miles because of, we thought, we had heard that there was some people bringing, dragging their boats upriver because it's too shallow, but it ends up that they just wanted to do it again. But we didn't have to go over beaver dams, just around them. And we had thought after, when we were doing this trip, that we were happy to be in kayaks because we weren't sure how canoes would be with how windy it was. It might have been tricky. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
the kid that we saw that first night, who was going to New Orleans or down to the Gulf, he was in a 19-foot kayak. And I have to say, just being in my 14-foot kayak, there was a lot of backing up, repositioning the kayak, backing up, repositioning. So I can't. Yeah.
And we also found out, with that he was in his 19-foot kayak. He was being supplied all the way down, but he had to have a really heavy kayak. He actually had to drag his kayak down that dam. He couldn't portage his own kayak. So
One of the problems he had, from what I remember, he carried a lot of water. He didn't think he'd be able to get water along the way. So he had like gallons and gallons of water, and his kayak was, I don't remember how heavy, but it was like ridiculously heavy. He did make it all the way though. We did follow his course, and he did make it all the way to New Orleans. From what I remember. I don't know.
What did you guys do for water? Did you filter the water?
Good question.
We must have.
yeah, we must have.
What- I mean,
And the guy did have a filter. He just didn't want to filter it up at the top of the Mississippi. He was going to wait till he was near the cities to use the filter. Yeah, I'm sure we had a filter.
I don't think he realized it's a lot bigger up there than it is further down.
yeah.
So
Any
Jen, I have a
other
question for
questions?
you. Are you from Minnesota?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes. I was born in Baudette and always have lived in Minnesota.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know you were born in Baudette. I'll have to talk to you about that sometime. So my question to you is, you call yourself a Minnesotan and a Rover, and you go on a camping trip in June with no bug spray? I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, Melissa had bug spray on. So when I cut up to Melissa, I put bug spray on my legs, but the area that was so buggy and rapidy and it was so turny and windy, I couldn't stop. I couldn't put on my spray skirt or anything. It was just super bad. So I think once I cut up with Melissa, I did have bug spray on, but I was trying to do the British way of gritting and bearing it. Yes.
One thing I remember, which was really weird, is there was a section right at the beginning where there was a lot of like deer flies, and they were landing on us, but they weren't biting, which I thought was really strange.
Yeah.
I don't know why they were landing on us but not biting us. I remember that, but that's weird. But I remember the mosquitoes later, they were certainly biting us. That one spot was really bad. But some areas were bad and some weren't at all, so.
Any other questions? So Stacy asked if we had a favorite campsite, and I think if it certainly wasn't Iron Bridge, because that was super buggy. Plus, there wasn't a lot of spots to put the tent. We were, even where Barry and I were, we weren't sure if it was a tent spot or not, because there was like a driveway with a house nearby. I think probably the Fox Trap campsite because we could do some hiking. And we were up on a hill so we could see the river and some wildlife and a tree hugger and everything.
Well, I think we've answered most questions. So thanks, Jen, for presenting tonight. It was quite a trip. It's a great trip to do. And I had read a lot of books about people that have done the whole length of the Mississippi, and I always wanted to do that. But then later I kind of changed my mind. But it was nice doing a section of it anyway.